welcome back, guys. You already know what it is, the pre-snap read. And if you check our social media site, if you check, the little corner right there, what that way, we got a new logo. We got a new logo. Shout out to your girl Robbie, man. Shout out to your girl Robbie. I think this week 9 or 10, 9 or 10.
Yeah, I think it's 10.
10. Okay,
No.
we can call it week 10.
We've really
We
been moving. Like this has been like both rewarding. The growth has been real, but also this is
mhm.
going by completely fast. Because I'm
Yeah,
just
it
like,
has.
I don't even remember how our first episode went, but now it's just we're in a groove now. It's like, okay,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, definitely.
news, coming at you live. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's it's been a cold summer for everybody, so a hot summer to be honest with you.
It's cold for me. Yeah.
Yeah. But my big dog Jerry ain't here. He had to do some other stuff. He had to go on a field trip today. But I got a special guest, man. I got a special guest. Um, I reached out to this man and literally he hit me back ASAP. So I'm like, okay, I like this dude. Um, if you're familiar with him, he's on Blue Bloods, man. Blue Bloods TV, Blue Bloods Twitter, Blue Bloods YouTube. He also on your boy All Script, man. He is Oscar give him all these nicknames: the Walking Encyclopedia, the Boy Wonder. On this show, we gonna call him Big Blue. God dang it, man!
Big
Everybody,
Blue.
welcome Big Blue, aka Blue Blood. Man, give it up, give it up, give it up.
Hey, I appreciate both of y'all for having me, man. Listen, I hit people up ASAP, man. I don't like DMs to sit. I'm a little bit ADD. If I don't respond right away, it's gonna be 2, 3 weeks before I get back to you, man. So
That's
I appreciate y'all
me.
reaching out. I definitely
I like
do.
you. I like you.
Definitely,
You're
definitely,
doing
definitely,
great.
man. And I was like, man, this week, these 2 weeks is going to be iconic because everything was going on in the draft coming up. I was like, I definitely got to get Blue Blood on here just to spit some facts and some knowledge. Because a lot of people don't know you on my platform, so definitely had to, you know, talk to the man, the myth, the legend. To give some straight hard hitting facts. For the people that like football out here, man. But Robin, go ahead, take it off, take it off.
Yes, yes. So everything to this week is going to be talking about football, right? But before we get into that, we're going to first jump into the latest news that we just found out today that Vice President and Athletic Director of FAMU, Courtney Gosha, I really never know how to pronounce his last name. My. But he is going to
Courtney
be stepping
Goshe.
down. Gosha. He's going to be stepping down effective immediately, guys. And we hear there's some different, opinions, both sides. Some people are like, yes, we need someone new. Some people are like, no, we just got him and he was new. So, I mean, what do you guys thought? Do you feel like this is a good move for fam? Do we feel like we're going in a better direction? Especially because, I mean, think about the timing of everything that's going on, right? We got the shift in our athletics. We're going to be experiencing like this peak in football season that's coming up. We got all of these things that's going to be centered around this school. So I mean, is it the best move to go ahead and step down? Do we think it's from him? What are we thoughts with this whole situation?
I
Um,
mean, I guess I'll kind of take it. For me, I'm a more of a football guy, but like looking at it from that perspective, there is worse timing. I mean, if this happened in the middle of football season, I think everybody would probably hit the panic button. But
Yeah.
you're entering kind of a dead period in sports. I know baseball's kind of wrapping up, softball's wrapping up, but really and truly, the months of late April to the Junes are probably one of the, I guess, least busy of the athletics department. So I
Yeah.
feel like the timing isn't as bad as some people are going to make it seem. But the questions that you asked, I think it all depends on how FAMU handles it.
Hmm.
One, we don't know if it was forced or if it was planned or anything like that. So how far in the search process are you? If you're starting from scratch, it's going to be kind of tough to get a great candidate by in the next few months, because you got
Right.
to get a search committee. You might have to hire a firm to help you like Auburn did when they hired their AD recently. What is the game plan there? Until I hear that, I'm kind of hesitant to say whether it was a good or bad move, and also if they nail the hire. If 3 years us three are sitting here talking, and the new AD comes in, and FAMU is at peak athletic achievements and revenue and things like that, we're all going to look back and say, "Great job, FAMU! You did this was
Yeah.
a good decision. I'm glad Courtney stepped down." But if they make a bad hire and FAMU takes a few steps back, or a scandal hits or something happens, then we're going to look back and say, "Oh, what happened with AD Courtney? Was this a really a smart move by FAMU?" So I really think you have to be patient with FAMU. We don't know all
Yeah.
the details yet. So for me, I'm kind of in a wait and see approach before I give my final verdict on whether this was a good or bad move for FAM.
Right. No, Blue, you bring up an amazing point because one, we cannot deny that Courtney made some transformative, efforts within his leadership. The LeBron James partnership. We just talked about what was it, Ron? The freezer that the football players can go in during the
Yeah.
hot season. The whatever
Hmm.
that is, we have that's coming through. You got the field house that's making its renovations. Bragg Stadium having
The
repairs.
stadium.
He
Yep.
did so much in his short, brief tenure that we cannot, negate the things that he's done. And so, yeah, Blue, you make up a great point. Whoever they do decide to hire, they have some pretty big shoes to fill because he definitely made some strenuous strides throughout his time. Being a new athletic director, that was his first position as an athletic director, as we, would agree upon as at this point, unless he did somewhere else. I think he was associate athletic director at University of Miami.
Yeah.
So like it was in facilities and operations though, so it was a lot more focused. While being an athletic director, you have a lot of things to overcome. You got to things to think about budget wise, expense wise, recruiting wise, your coaches, your sports, all of those things. So I think, I would agree with you there. It just depends on what is now next after Courtney. Where do we see this, this program going? And if it's going to be sustainable from what he's already started. So it's interesting. Ron, what is your take?
Just by how HBCU culture is, like I feel like they brought new to the playoff your name. They brought new blood to the system as far as FAMU because there was a whole bunch of old and people don't know how to work their phones, and you got people out
Mhm.
here talking
Mhm.
about technology is the devil and all this other stuff. But all jokes aside, I think I think we're still going to be going in the right direction. Just like Blue said, we need to make sure we solidify a good hire because if we don't, we
Yeah.
can easily be back in like the 6-6 season and the four
Mhm.
and whatever seasons. And I called a couple people and I was like, okay, if this happened, how long does Coach Willie have his contract? And he's like, well, this is kind of his last year on his contract. And I'm like,
Mm.
whew, okay, this was last year on his contract. So basically, if I'm Coach Willie Simmons and, my athletic director left because they had a good relationship and I'm on my
Right.
last year on my contract, like, I have to go all out.
Yeah.
I have to go all out to win as many games as I can and get many recruits I can and try to like this SWAC championship or bust this year with Coach Simmons
Right.
because at, if he doesn't make it to the SWAC championship, it's kind of like a bust. Just to be honest with the season, because that's the
Right.
thing he strives to get. That's the one thing he's missing right now. A win from Jackson State and the SWAC championship. That's literally
Mhm.
the two things he's missing to complete everything that he wanted to complete, and also the Celebration Bowl, which everybody
Yeah.
loves. Yeah, yeah.
And let's not forget,
Playoffs.
Courtney was just in his tenure when they transitioned from MEAC to SWAC. Like he's kind of the point person for that to be as successful as it was, because he was like in that position maybe 6 months, and then boom, they moved from MEAC to SWAC. So yeah,
It,
that's a lot.
you know, If I'm the search committee though, or whoever's in charge of making the hire, if I'm FAMU, I'm telling everyone I interview, if head coach Willie Simmons wants to be here, that's non-negotiable. Like, I'm not
Right.
offering you the job if you're not committed to Willie Simmons. Like, because we see a lot of times the ADs, they come, whether it's good or bad, with their preconceived connections. I mean, that's why every time an AD is hired somewhere, there's rumors that a head coach is going to follow up, a lower assistant's going to follow, whatever it may be. If I'm FAMU, I'm saying you're not even getting a contract offer unless you sign on the dotted line that Willie Simmons is not going anywhere unless it's under his own accord. If Willie Simmons gets another
Yep.
job, etc., or wants to retire, even though that's way down the line as he's not at that age yet. But I'm not even putting that on the table. Like, that is non negotiable. And as much as it's a championship or bust, like you said, I don't know if it's a SWAC championship or bust. Because let's say
Mm-hmm.
they lose to North Carolina week 1, because that's a money game, and they lose to Jackson
Mm-hmm.
State, but they win out and they're finished 9-2. They get into the playoffs again. If he wins a playoff game, even without a SWAC championship, I still think he's earned his keep. That's 2 straight
Yes.
FCS playoff appearances. And even if he doesn't win, let's say they get a bad draw, they get a Kennesaw State or someone around the area, and they lose a close game, because Kennesaw is on a different level. Southeastern
Mhm.
Louisiana might not win their conference because they lost Go Kelly. So we'll keep it at Kennesaw. If they lose
Mm-hmm.
a 7-point game to Kennesaw on the road in Atlanta, because Kennesaw is going to outbid them because they got the money. I don't know if I think that Willie Simmons has earned his keep in that case. So I don't know if I'm fully on the board of his championship or bust, but it's, you better finish second in your division. If you finish below
Yeah.
A&M, Alabama State, God forbid Valley, that's
Mhm.
where I think you get into the,
He said,
okay,
God forbid.
yeah, you can't finish below Valley. I'm sorry. FAMU
You
should
really
be a
can't. Yeah.
FAMU should be a top 3 SWAC team every year. And I think as
Every year.
Mm-hmm.
FAMU, grads yourself, you agree with that. The expectations are there, but if you lose a Jackson State game, a close one, because Jackson State's loaded this year, if it's a one score game, I won't even say a 1-point game, I still think FAMU is going to be okay. And as long as you're competitive, but I think where you do come in is, if Jackson State beats you by 30 to open the season, and you're 0-2 with a 30-point loss to Jackson and a blowout loss to UNC, then I think your statement of, okay, we got to get something going here if you're Willie Simmons, that might hold true. But I think FCS playoffs, SWAC championship, Celebration Bowl win, all those things I think will give Willie Simmons the proper momentum going into the new AD's reign.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting to seeing. This is hit news. We just found out about it, so of course they're going to take some time, go through that process of doing the search committee, like you said, doing the hiring, and seeing where we go. But wish Courtney the best of luck in his journey wherever he's going after this. Maybe he's just doing more athletically, or maybe he's going back to, I don't know, some leadership positions elsewhere. But good luck to him. He's doing great.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Everything are
now we got to
stepping
talk football,
stones.
guys. Yeah, we
Definitely.
gotta talk football, football, football.
Definitely.
Listen, okay, so let's start off first. JSU, we all know that is being televised on Sunday. It's a big deal having an HBCU being televised. One, and two, it's going to be on ESPNU, 5 p.m. Central Time. So one thing about it, two things for sure. We got to talk about these athletes. Who is, what do we feel like the athlete is going to like really pull this team together? There's some like nice, clean athletes that's going to make it, one of those seasons where it's like, okay, these are the point people that we need to have in every game. These are the folks that's going to like really, make this, the team to beat. Because we already know JSU is stacked, right? We got Deion Sanders, prime time is the leadership. We already know how that goes, even with his amputated toe, bless his heart. But where we guys see what do we see Jackson State doing this year?
Oh man, I mean, there's so much to look forward to this Sunday. I mean, one, like you said, just the historic nature of an HBCU or an even FCS program. I don't even think there's been an
Yeah.
FCS program to have their game televised on ESPNU or any ESPN network. I mean, that's reserved for the SEC, ACC, and
Mhm.
Jackson
Mm-hmm.
State gets theirs in primetime on a Sunday. I don't know many other schools that even have their game on a Sunday. I think the only thing they'll be competing with is probably the NBA playoffs and then the
Mm-hmm.
USFL, which came out of nowhere this next year. So I'm expecting the viewership to be high. But I mean,
Right.
obviously, everyone wants to see Travis Hunter. I mean, no
Yeah.
matter where Travis Hunter committed, people were going to tune in. If he goes to Florida State's probably got a primetime slot too, because they want to see what Travis Hunter has. So I'm excited to see what he brings. But also, there's some big question marks. You look at the offensive line play last year was absolutely atrocious. As a former O lineman, every single Sunday night, Monday morning on my show, I was raging. Like, I mean, you can pull the clips. Every week, I just got progressively more mad at how bad that O line played. And then at safety, Shiloh has an ACL tear. We don't know if it's
Yep.
partial. We don't know if it's a full
Mm-hmm.
tear. I'm assuming we'll find something out on the broadcast. For Jackson State, they've kept that so under wraps. We haven't seen a YouTuber really talk about it. We haven't seen a report on ESPN, HBCU Game Day. They've done an excellent job for the media covers they get to really keep that under wraps. So I'm one interested to see
Right.
who's stepping into a spot. We know Cam is going to be Cam at that other safety spot, but who's that
Exactly.
second safety? That's a big question mark for me. And then also on top of that, is the running back room going to be more improved? JD Martin, Santee Marshall were extremely inconsistent last year, partly due to the O line. But you also got Tyson Alexander coming back. He had a massive spring season, and a lot of people are excited to see what he brings to that room. So I think when you look at all those factors, I think there's a lot to pay attention to. And also, how is Shador going to develop? Because we've heard the term sophomore slump used so often with players that have explosive first seasons. And so I want to see what steps Shador has taken over the offseason to take his game to the next level. Working with Tom
Mm-hmm.
Brady, posting all the clips, the expectations are high. I said on a show earlier today, for me, I need Shador to step into the role of a top 5 FCS quarterback, and he should win
Mm-hmm.
SWAC Offensive Player of the Year. If those two things don't happen, I think this year's a disappointment for Shador Sanders. So I think that's another thing I'm going to be watching very closely.
All I know is, and I'm going to be watching the defense because the linebackers coach talking about something. You better Will Smith them people.
Man.
And I said, why would they take that man and use that as
Man.
a joke? So here goes me. I'm gonna be like, y'all defense, where y'all at? Y'all better be slapping people like Will
Shoot,
Smith
yeah,
playing Chris Rock.
shoot. That's what happened to South Carolina State. They smacked South Carolina, and South Carolina smacked them back, and that's looking like Chris
Smack them
Rock.
back. Right. Smack them back. That's what
And
we wanted
shoot,
Chris to do, but he doesn't
exactly.
oppose you
But
anyway.
like Blue said, my main focus is the offensive line because everything starts
Hmm.
there as far as the quarterback, running back, and the timing of receivers. Because if your offensive line is not there, then you really don't have nothing, and you just have to keep pulling. You have to keep pulling. Excuse my language. You have to keep pulling something out your ass to make things work,
Hmm.
and that's
Hmm.
frustrating as far as a coach. Every week, you have to keep finding stuff for something to work, and you only have like two or three go to plays when you can literally have about probably 25 in college range go to plays where you can just go, go, go and not worry about the offensive line. So, that's a big thing for me that I'm going to watch. And also the secondary, you do got Travis Hunter and he's like you said, Shiloh's out. So,
Hmm.
looking at the secondary, we need to see are they going to really be physical this year, especially with big receivers. Because like
Right.
you saw in the South Carolina State game, if you over 6'2", you eating all day in the end zone.
Hmm.
So we need to see more physicality as far as like the corners. I think we will see that with Travis Hunter, but just with all the other secondary, they definitely need to step up. The slot corners definitely need to step up. But as far as Shador, I'm really looking for not to making that mistake because a lot of games he
Hmm.
made that one mistake that could have cost him a game, but the defense kept him in the game. So just making sure he doesn't make that one mistake, and he's all good with me. And like you said, Blue, he should be winning. He should be winning more trophies this year than he did last
Right. Now, on the MEAC side, we got South Carolina State. They're also holding their spring game. I know we just talked about how, it's not the normal to have a spring game on a Sunday, but they're also having theirs same day as Jackson State. Um, One, kind of just looking at the logistics of that, is it always good to have this is, opinionated, of course. Is it good to have like pro day on the same day as like, someone that's probably having their things televised, or like all the the media, the attention, the popularity to the other team. So now you're like, okay, well, I still have my spring game today too. It's a little bit different from like, pro day. You want to have the most exposure as possible. Spring game, you can have a little bit of flexibility with it, but you think that's always a good idea to kind of have that strategic setting on that planning day, or it doesn't really matter?
I mean, I think depending on like what team it is, it might matter, but I
Hmm.
don't think South Carolina State was going to get TV coverage for their spring game,
Hmm.
regardless of when they had it. And on top of that, you're always going to compete with somebody because there's 130 FBS programs and like
Right.
132 FCS programs. So you're always
Right.
going to have somebody competing. Because I mean, if it's not JSU's day, you have it on Saturday, and then Georgia has their G day, or Alabama has their A day, or whatever it is. So if you're an FCS program, just kind of schedule it whenever works for you. And also, it's actually kind of a great, I guess, social media ploy. I don't know if they've done it. I would do it if I was them. Plug, you know, yeah, they might have their game on ESPNU, but we're getting our celebration trophy out, the same day they are, and kind of make it like a South Carolina State versus Jackson State thing. Poke a little fun at it. I don't know if they've
Right.
done that on social media. The whole social media thing's a little bit different for some schools, but I would
Hmm.
absolutely be like, yeah, the Celebration Bowl champs are having theirs on the same day, and kind of, play a little bit into it. But I don't think it really mattered in the long run because they weren't probably going to be on any ESPN channel in the first place.
Right, right. Now, looking at where they are and all the changes that VAC is having, we'll get to that in a second. But
Yeah.
where do you see is South Carolina State doing this year? Do we feel like they're going to be doing a lot? They have a stacked season. They're coming off first game is University of Central Florida, and they're playing at Bethune, North Carolina A&T, so on and so forth. So what do you think? Where are they at with their season, and where do you project for them to do as far as finishing out?
I mean, I think they're the favorites going into the MEAC.
Yeah.
You look at all the teams that have left. I don't think I don't think anyone in there, like, because with Hampton, Howard, North Carolina State, FAMU, Bethune, I mean, all the teams are gone, and you're left with really Norfolk and them. I don't think Morgan State's ready to compete. Delaware State probably a long shot third. If they get hot, they can maybe make some noise. And I mean,
Hmm.
let's just be honest, no one else is really on their level. And when you're looking at the question marks surrounding them, it's all that the DB spot. You lose Zafir Kelly, you lose to Kobe Durant. Who is going to be your corners? Those guys are long, rangy playmakers, first team All Americans. Jacoby Durant was the MEAC Defensive Player of the Year, I believe, twice, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, maybe once. I mean, he is a different type of talent, and he's going to be really hard to replace. But are your young guys developed and ready to go? And if Buddy Pugh's track record suggests anything, they're going to be really good. And
Right.
they have somebody waiting in the wings because he is one of the better developers of talent in the MEAC and really in the FCS. He's done it for so long, man. I mean, he's like the godfather of FCS football. It's like he's been around forever. And then also the linebacker spot. They lose Gilchrist, and I believe they lost one more. Gilchrist had a great performance at the Legacy Bowl when I was down there in New Orleans. But I
Mhm.
heard from Bulldog Report, which is the South Carolina State Insider podcast. They said the linebackers are flying around. They said they got 3, 4 guys that could probably start on any given Saturday. So it sounds like
Mhm.
they're good, and I'm ready to see that put on film. But the rest of the team's pretty self-explanatory. I believe the entire offensive line from the Celebration Bowl were freshmen and sophomores. They're returning
Yeah.
almost all the wide receivers, including Shaq Davis. Corey Fields is coming back. They're returning all their running backs. The offense, for me, I just want to see how they develop because the offense up until the Jackson State game was really a detriment to that team. You look at that FAMU game, they really, really got abused by that defense. And they lost a few games throughout the season. I believe they even lost to Valley, only scoring like 16 points last year. So
Right.
I need more offensive consistency. And as everyone gets a step older, I need to see that progression. So I'm really interested to see the secondary and the offensive creativity, progression, execution overall, because I think they have a lot of potential. If that offense can really average maybe 25, 28 points a game, South Carolina State's going to be really hard to beat.
Right.
Definitely. Definitely. Blue light, everything you said. I'm really looking at how the offense meshed together this year because like you said, they're coming off that amazing they're coming off an up and down year. Like literally, the year was a roller coaster for them. You did not know what team you was going to expect when you played South Carolina State. You either was going to get the bad team or the good team. So just coming off this spring game, I really want to see their offense clicking, like their running game clicking. Like they should be they should still be in the same rhythm as they was in the Celebration Bowl. That's what I'm really looking at. Like, I understand you may make little missed throws or something like that. I know he's not the best quarterback in the world, but just being on point. That's why I want to see the offense at. Just being on point, making sure you know your check downs, making sure you reading the defense right. So, and making sure you know what your bread and butter is. It's the running game. It's not the passing game. So if South Carolina can just stay focused to the run, 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 then pass, I think their offense will be going, putting up numbers this year for real in the FCS. Defensive side, to me, I'm not really worried about defense for Buddy Pugh because he always been a defensive minded coach since he
Hmm.
been there. So like South Carolina State defense, since I was a little kid and I grew up in South Carolina, their defense was been amazing, like amazing. I wanted to go there and play defense, even though I played on offense. I was like, oh yeah, I need to go there and play defense. But I'm not really too worried about the defense side, even though they're giving up major talent to go to the NFL. But I think he can replace that in half a season time. So just getting their feet wet, getting in front of them, actually playing in a real time situation game. I think things are going to change for their cornerbacks and their secondary. During the season.
Right. Well, guys, listen, Alabama State University is doing some big things with recruiting. One thing I wanted to point out is there's two transfers that are going. One is coming from Clemson. He's a tight end, Jalen Lay. And
Mm-hmm.
another one is a quarterback from Auburn, Demetrius Davis, and two others coming from other universities, Division One. And then we have some two signed letter of intent. When you're seeing, Power Five schools losing athletes, matter who it is, and they're transferring, to an HBCU, FCS. What can that one do for that university? Even if, okay, we don't know yet how they're going to play with ASU. We don't know yet because they haven't gotten there yet. We have an idea, maybe, comparing and contrasting what they've done for their respective universities, but then you see them, you know, those are some amazing programs. Like, I literally just saw the locker room for Clemson and I wanted to go. I don't care nothing about the team. The locker room had me at hello. So it's like, again, of course, it goes deeper into just, the the niceness or the luxuries of being at a Division One program as big as Clemson and Auburn. But what do you think kind of goes into those decisions that's being made to transfer, and what can that do for that school or that athlete?
I mean, I guess I could speak for D Davis because I was at Auburn at the same time he was, and know kind of his story a little bit better. I mean, it was for him. You look at the coaching change from Gus Malzahn. He was in one of those last Gus Malzahn recruiting classes before he was ultimately fired in the COVID season for, a different a bunch of different reasons. We'll just leave it at that. And
Yeah.
so one, he didn't fit the new scheme under Brian Harsin and Mike Bobo as the OC, and they wanted a more pro style attack. And really and truly, D Davis, in my opinion, was arguably a more talented quarterback than anybody else on campus at Auburn. But you look at Bo Nix being a legacy, being a 5-star, according to some places, that person's always going to get kind of the nod, the first nod. And then he comes out in his first game, throws the game winner against Oregon for a big top 10 upset, leads Auburn to an upset win over Alabama. He was never going to lose the starting job. I mean, we'll just
Yeah.
keep it 100. And then he ends up transferring to Oregon. TJ Finley's there, has a bunch of experience, fits the system a lot better. And Davis has never really got his shot at Auburn. So I think that played a large role in him transferring. He seemed to love the
Mm,
state of Alabama. And also, he's very close, from what I can tell, to Andrew Body's family, being Texas high school legends from where
mhm.
they're from. And so I think watching what Andrew Body did played a large role in him coming to the SWAC, just kind of based on my outsider's perspective. And you also look at all the positive momentum and media coverage and everything that's going on in the SWAC. Why would you not want to come? I mean,
Right.
really and truly, Alabama State had a QB need. He saw a great opportunity to come in and make an impact in the state that he was already accustomed to living in, being in
Mm,
Auburn. It's literally 45 minutes up I-85. So D Davis, I
right.
think, made a great decision. And right now, I put him in the top 3 SWAC quarterbacks just off the rip without even him touching the field, just because of what he can
Hmm.
bring. And for Lay, coming from Clemson, that tight end room was so deep, man. They had Braden Galloway. They had a lot of other guys that were, you know, also on, making their way into the program. And then also Tony Elliott, the OC, who was one of the top recruiters, Brent Venables as the DC. Both of those guys leave. Venables taking the Oklahoma head job, and then Tony Elliott taking the Virginia head coaching job. A lot of those players were very close to them because Clemson was that program where they didn't lose assistants. Venables has
Right.
been there forever. Elliott has been there for a while. And before him, I believe it was Jeff Scott was there for a long time as well, ended up going to USF. So I feel like a lot of the players with the massive overhaul of what Clemson had last year, a lot of the players felt like they could find opportunities elsewhere. You saw some decommitments. And also with Dabo, for me, from an outsider's perspective as well, not a huge fan of Dabo, his
Mm.
media presence, some of the stuff he says, and I do feel like that does rub some players the wrong way, even though the players really haven't come out and said that. I just don't see how it can't rub some players the wrong way. So I feel like that also could play in a big decision. And also, the offense was such a big need for Alabama State. So why not go to Alabama State, get some playing time, and the defense is going to be taken care of because that program just has a defensive mentality. They did a great hire getting the guy from Bowie State, who that defense ranked top 10, I believe, in the
Yep.
CIAA and D2 in like 8 different
Hmm.
categories. And they had the defensive player of the year and multiple All Americans. So for me, I don't blame anyone for going. And if you're a defensive player, there's no better system to play in. It's fast, physical. They allow players to be themselves and play free. So for me, it's really no surprise. That the biggest surprise was how well Eddie Robinson Jr. is recruiting. There was a lot of people
Hmm.
critical of the hire, including myself. I'm like, you had Kevin Sumlin beating down the door. You had at that time Hugh Jackson,
Mm.
and you had all these people. Why would you hire a real estate agent with no coaching experience? That makes
We were talking
zero
about that.
sense. And
Yep.
here he is, and it's like
That
it's
real
like Dion
estate.
said. Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, he could sell the hell out of the program apparently,
I
and
guess
like
so.
Dion said a year ago, it ain't fun when the rabbits got the gun, and right now Alabama State has
Hmm.
the gun pointed at the rest of the SWAC, and they're ransacking the transfer portal.
Absolutely. Now, I have a
Yes, sir.
question, kind of catering into the elephant in the room. We know that the Power Five schools, big schools, like they automatically kind of have that foundational exposure when we're thinking of like pro. We're thinking of pro day, when we're thinking of combine, when we're thinking of all of those, necessary resources to get these athletes to the next level. How important it is for an athlete to really kind of consider that when they, are potentially going to a school that doesn't have those same resources. Not to say that they can't get them there, because of course, as we've been seeing in the news and all the pro brain, all the combine, these athletes from HBCUs, and from these FCS programs are making their name known. But we do have to take into reality that that is a gamble, that's a risk. So how important it is for these athletes to kind of think about that as they're going into that transfer kind of mindset of going from such a large institution to something that's a little bit more smaller, less resourceful.
I mean, I think it kind of goes back to what Coach Prime said is like if you're into the facilities and the glory or what or the 90,000 person stadiums or etc., then yeah, like maybe coming to the FCS level is not for you. I mean,
Yeah.
let's keep it 100. I mean, if you want, like Clemson, I've seen the facilities firsthand. If you want to slide, that you could slide down from the fourth floor to the first floor, then coming to Alabama State is probably not for you because they're not going to have that. And we're just going to keep it real there. And if you want a scoreboard like Auburn that's longer than the White House, then Alabama State's probably not for you, or
Hmm.
whoever in the FCS. I mean, Kennesaw State's not for you. But
Yeah.
if you're just looking to get to the NFL and you're looking to keep your head down and work and earn your keep, then like you can go anywhere, man. I mean, it's been I don't know how many more times it has to be proven. I mean, North Dakota State's had 2 top 5 picks in 4 years or 5 years,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
Carson Wentz and Trey Lance. And then Alabama State had offensive tackle drafted about 3 or 4 years ago in the first round. And this year, I mean, a kid from Northern Iowa, UNI, is going to go probably top 15 at offensive
Right.
tackle with Trevor Penning. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And yes, it matters where you're drafted. I don't like the narrative that it doesn't matter where you're drafted. Yes, overall success, it doesn't, because you can be a 6th round
Hmm.
pick and you can make it, but the path is a lot harder if you're
Right.
drafted in the 6th round. Let's just be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
in the 6th round, there's I know there's extra picks because of compensatory picks, but let's say 40 picks, probably 30 of those aren't making a roster. They're going to
Right.
training
Because you
camp,
still got to
maybe on
go
a
to
practice.
camp. Yep. Yep.
Exactly. So the first round pick, second, third round are almost guaranteed a roster spot. Even if you don't perform up to level you should, you get guaranteed money. You get different contracts. So the narrative that it doesn't matter where you're drafted, that's a lot. I mean,
Correct.
it does matter because being that first round pick matters. But if you're just looking for a chance, man, you can go anywhere. If you perform, you're going to get you're going to get looked at. There's no reason that who was the kid, Kyle Duggar for the Patriots, went to Lenore
Hmm.
Ryan and was a
Yep.
second round pick.
In North
And I mean,
Carolina.
yeah, I mean, come on, man. If you can get drafted at Lenore Ryan, you can get drafted anywhere. And
And that's a
Anywhere.
so,
D2 school, correct?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
D2 school. And
Me too.
the kid from Joshua
I'm
Williams
having
from
some
Fayetteville
fun.
State, I mean, he's probably going to get drafted from the D2 level. I mean, and it just the
Yeah.
list goes on and on. I mean, Joe Flacco from Delaware. I mean, there's
Mhm.
so many
Yep.
examples. So I think the idea of kids saying that we have to go to these select programs is kind of dead. And it just depends on what you want. I mean, yes, it's always great to be a star at Alabama, and Bryce Young's going to be on Sports Center every single day, the entire season, and so is CJ Stroud at Ohio State. But at the same time, you can go elsewhere and still achieve your ultimate goal. So I think it goes back to what Coach Prom said. What do you want? What do you want your path to look like? What do you value in your college experience? And if it's the money and the facilities, go to a Power Five. That's great. But if you want a different experience, a valuable experience, just to get to the NFL and play and do all these other extra stuff, you can go anywhere, man. Just go where you feel comfortable. Coaching matters, connections matter. So I think the idea of you having to go Power Five is it should be dead, and I think it is slowly dying.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Blue. Like, right, Chad Ocho Cinco said, if you, no matter where you at, if you can play in between those two white lines, they're gonna come. Like they
Hmm.
did for Steve Manera, they came. They
Yeah.
had to put him on television because he was just that dynamic. And I guess
Right.
a lot of people is seeing that now. Like, okay, we don't have to go to a Power Five and wait 3 years to play. We can
Right.
go anywhere in the United States. Then not just the SWAC. We can go to any FCS schools or lower FBS schools and play. So like,
Right.
just making their own narrative, this to test the YouTube Blue, like interviewing players, it was like that fit wasn't for me. When I was at this Power Five school, like when I got there, it just wasn't for me. They didn't attend to my needs as far as education, as far as my improvement. And you can tell that once they enter these SWAT schools or other FCS schools, they feel loved. They feel like they're being attended to. They feel like they're working on their downfalls as far as on the field and making them better and making them succeed in the classroom, on and off the field. So like anywhere you go now, it's like I want playing time. I want to be better. I want to be a better athlete. I want to play on Sunday. So that's the mindset of these athletes now when they're picking their school. It's like, hey, I don't have to go to a Power Five. I can go right down here to Lane College or whatever and ball out. So what you trying to do? So it's a power shift, and history repeat itself a lot. So back in the day, all these teams that was FCS, we really was popping, and now it's popping again. So I'm very happy for all the FCS teams because their name need to get shined on too.
And we know statistics don't lie. When you show up and you show out, your statistics is going to be measured upon all levels, right? No matter where you come from, whatever what school you go to. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of put that together. And even just shout out to Alabama State that's been doing a very good job with their athletes in the long run. Israel Gray, running back, he was one of the top recruits coming out of the HBCU, showing out for combine. So it's one of those things where it, like you said, Blue, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, we know there's the narrative out there. We know there's you can't escape it just because of the foundation of historically how it's been rooted. But I mean, these guys are going to play regardless of where they're coming from. So, shout out to Alabama State doing it big. With Eddie Robinson, go ahead with your
bad
historical
self, cause
features of
he
knowing how
he
to sell
he
land, set a football program. He doing
he's
something right.
selling something because
He doing
these
something right.
people out here, he's selling. I don't know what he's selling in Alabama, but he's selling something, boy.
Something,
Whoo,
something, baby.
cause he was a
But you
laughing
gotta
stock
do
at
that when
first.
you work in real estate. When you work in real estate or like a car dealership or anything that you have to sell a product, you have to get people invested and persuade them. Honey, like that's a tack that people really need as far as recruiting that can help them be so much more advantaged and so much more beneficial. Especially when you're coming from like a smaller program or a program that doesn't have a lot of resources. You have to sell them on what you're able to offer. The only thing about it is just, making good on what your word is. Like, don't sell me no pipe dream. You're not gonna come through with your end on it. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. But
Yeah,
he must be doing something
but
right. Good for them.
they do got the best facilities in the SWAT though.
I was
So
about
I
to
mean, he
that.
got
Listen, that stadium's clean.
Alabama State is better than Fam.
Yes, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
It is. It's nicer.
I didn't know.
They stadium Robin. When I say they facilities is like up there. Yeah,
Really? I
yeah,
Oh
drove
yeah,
around Alabama State one time. It's I wouldn't have guessed that. Just looking at the campus holistically. I don't know if you've been, Ron, but Blue, you've been the ASU's campus. Okay,
hmm
so like on the outskirts, it doesn't look like it should have, you know, that niceness of it. But I'm like, okay, maybe I should go in.
yeah.
Maybe I should go to the
I
game.
I mean,
Okay,
because they got their stadium built like into the interstate. So like when you get off of I-65 and go onto 85, when you come
yeah,
around the corner, their stadium like towers over the interstate because they got one's like short side
jeez.
of they got like one short
Yeah,
side of stands and then it goes all the way around and then they have like two big upper decks on the far side with like
yeah.
that come
right.
like down into the stadium and it is like gorgeous and they got a beautiful big scoreboard and it's all nice and they have like a big arch over there. I mean, it's really nice over by the stadium and so they got money, man. I've talked to some people in the SWAC that they said Alabama State's a sleeping giant. If they get things rolling, it could be real ugly for some other
Yeah.
SWAC teams.
But
Oh,
then
wee.
I tell people this: Alabama State does. I mean, Alabama, just the state of Alabama, they don't have an NFL team, an NBA team. So all they
No,
tax
that's all they
dollars
have is yeah,
go into those
yeah,
schools. All they
Oh
tax
yeah.
yeah.
dollars go into those schools. So they better have one of the best stadiums in the SWAC. Shoot.
And specifically, even just talking about football, because I mean, I'm not too big on basketball, but I also don't really hear Alabama like for basketball. You know what I mean? Like in
Mm-hmm.
in all different styles and facts about it. So I'm just all right now. I'm gonna have to go to a game then so I can see.
Shoot.
But on the topic of transferring and those in the portal, we know that the transfer portal is definitely going to help, HBCUs individually, but when it comes to competing, the other FCS level of different schools in the FCS level, where do we see that the portal can definitely help these schools? Are they going to be able to be in contention of, actually being consistent competitors through other FCS schools, not just within their own respective conferences? Or is there still work to be done in addition to those transfer portals and what that offers them?
I mean, I think the groundwork is laid, especially when you look at like a Jackson State. I mean, you can't be landing the number one FCS class 2 years in a row and then not be able to win your out of conference games. I mean, last year they
Hmm.
won the out of conference game against Tennessee State in the OVC. They beat a D2 team for homecoming, but then they lost to South Carolina State. So they're 2-1, 1-1 if you just want to say out of conference FCS teams. But this year's a
Right.
real big year for the SWAC because I mean when you look at the overall rankings, like you would just assume, like, yes, the SWAT could compete with anybody. But then when you look last year in the biggest games against the biggest out of conference opponents, the SWAC teams were getting drugged, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Murray State 35 to nothing over Mississippi Valley State.
Mississippi
FAMU
Valley. Yeah.
Yeah.
38 to 14 against Southeastern Louisiana and didn't score against the starters. And
Hmm.
Southeastern Louisiana, I don't mean to make y'all feel bad, had the worst ranked defense in the FCS
Oh,
Defense,
playoffs.
we
yes.
know. We
Yeah.
Like,
The
know. We
worst
I
know.
mean, like, and
the
I picked
worst.
FAMU and for the upset, and I was so frustrated with that game, just to let y'all know. But like, it doesn't make sense. Like, FAMU has a team. When you look at roster wise,
Yeah.
they shouldn't be losing like that to Southeastern Louisiana. And you
No.
look at all these teams. Listen, I'm an FCS guy. I don't know how much y'all know about McNeese, but McNeese is in the
Mhm.
Southland. They're
Hmm.
15-0 against the SWAC. How is that possible? McNeese is atrocious at football.
They're sad. They're
And
so
Yeah.
sad.
and
I
Sad.
went to LSU and I'm from Louisiana, and I know whenever we hear McNeese, we're like, "Come on, y'all!
that's
Like
what
you can do this."
and they're not beating just bad, like, they're not beating up on the bad teams. They're beating Alcorn, SWAC
Yeah.
champions, Southern,
Yep.
one of the top
Yeah.
teams
Yep.
in the SWAC. They're beating up on teams that you should be able to compete against. And then Incarnate Word, 41-9 against PV.
Hmm.
Your
Hmm.
SWAC West champions. That and I know, listen, Cameron Ward, all world at quarterback,
Yep.
and that's why he's at Washington State now. He was the Jerry Rice winner in the spring, the award Shador won. He's really
Hmm.
good. And Incarnate Word was a great team. They almost knocked off Sam Houston last year. We'll leave it at that. But the
Mhm.
next step for the SWAC, like you asked, is winning those games. You have the
Hmm.
recruits, you have the coaching. I mean, you look at Dancy, you look at Willie Simmons, you look at Deion Sanders, you look at Connell Maynard. Like, these coaches aren't scrubs. Like,
Yeah.
you have real coaching talent. And you
Correct.
look at KJ Black going to coach for the Rams. There are real assistants here
Yeah.
too that can coach at a high level. And when you look at it, it doesn't make sense why the SWAC isn't winning out of conference games. You look at A&T, eighth on that list. They're dragging the SWAC and MEAC consistently. They moved to the Big South, not a great conference, and they finished third. And they're
Hmm.
not even competitive in some of the games. They get shut out by Kennesaw. So something has to click right. And I don't know what it is, because you look at the rosters, they're comparable. You look at the coaching, they're comparable, but it just seems like every time a SWAC team gets in a big game, it doesn't click in place. And so this year's a big year. There's a lot of out of conference games that these teams have to win. FAMU doesn't really have a big FCS out of conference game on their schedule this year because of the money games and things like that. But you look at Jackson State against Campbell.
Yeah.
That's a must win. And I
Yeah.
say
Yes.
must win regardless of what Jackson State's record is, because if they go undefeated, guys, win the Celebration Bowl, win the SWAC championship, and they lose to Campbell, they will never hear the end of it from the FCS media,
Mm-mm.
because that is
Yeah.
going to
Correct.
look at, because Campbell is not good. I
They're
mean,
not.
that
Hmm.
they were 3-win team last year. They had the number 2 recruiting class this year. That's great. Those players are still freshmen. They're going to take some time to develop. If you lose to Campbell on homecoming at home, it I don't know what to say. And then
It's a
you
That's
look
it.
sad
at
day in hell.
exactly. And then Tarleton State plays Valley this year. Tarleton State is a team only been FCS for 3 years. They just came up from D2, and they have a really good team. Stephen Duncan from Western Kentucky is their quarterback. If they beat Valley, how demoralizing is that you just lost to a team that's barely FCS right now? And
Yep.
then Alcorn's got a big game. Stephen F. Austin is coming to Lorman week 1. Stephen F. Austin, in my opinion, is a team that can win the title this year. That's how good they are. They returned 16 of 22 All-Americans on that team. All of
Mm.
them were freshmen and sophomore. They are legit. Trey Self is a monster at quarterback, and they got the best player in FCS, in my opinion, Xavier Gibson at wide receiver. Alcorn cannot get drugged that game. That game's got to
Yeah.
stay competitive. I don't know if they'll win it, but if you allow them to come into Lorman and beat you 41-9 or something like that, that's a huge loss for the SWAC. And I mean, the list just goes on and on. Southern doesn't play an FCS team. How is that possible? You're the powerhouse of the SWAC, and you schedule two
Right.
D2 teams and no big games because you're
No
not beating
FC. Yeah.
LSU. We'll just leave it
No.
at that. And so
At
Alabama
all.
State, Alabama State, they got to go play Howard. You cannot lose to Howard
It
week 1.
cannot.
Hmm.
That is a for sure you cannot lose to Howard. And then Alabama A&M, you got Austin Peay coming to you in prime time, third week of the season, you got to win that game. You cannot be losing to Austin Peay. So I can go through all the schedules and tell you that there's some real chances to win games for the SWAC, and I would favor the SWAC in probably 3 of those 5, 6 games that I talked about. But if you go out there and lose all those games, the narrative's never going to shift. And so you've shifted the
Mm,
narrative in recruiting, you've shifted the narrative in TV and social media and all these things. But until you start beating somebody, it's really all for naught.
yeah, that's
Definitely,
very true.
definitely. Um, I feel the same way you feel. Like we need the SWAC need to start scheduling more out of conference games, even though like it, some of these teams are literally that they can play are right down the road from each other. So like
And not
there's
a money game. Like there's a difference from out of conference games and money games. They need to
mhm,
understand that that is a distinction. You can have out of conference games that is going to bring the challenge and allow your athletes to fully develop to the capability that you want them to go and not be so complacent into what you're doing or to just chuck it off and be like, oh, okay, yeah, like you said, Southern's gonna play LSU. Like everybody know how the game is gonna go. You know what I'm saying? But could they play another team out of conference that's going to help them build up to their schedule, build up the balance that they need, but also create, more longevity within their program to actually be competitive enough to sustain that. That's a different type of story. And I feel like they're not, I don't know if the conversation not being had or no one's listening. That's
Um,
that's the team.
I took a lot of bullets because, being an outsider and who I am coming in covering the swag, a lot of people were very skeptical at first. And so I took a lot of bullets because I didn't understand it. Like I took a lot of bullets on the Celebration Bowl because I was like, why are y'all playing the Celebration Bowl and not in the playoffs? That doesn't make sense. And I got killed for that. And now I understand the money. And so I've let that argument die. And then
Yeah.
I talked about out of conference games. And so the argument that I got back from a lot of SWAC fans was, you know, they really don't care. I mean, because they don't go to
Mm,
the playoffs, because they don't care what these other PWI programs care, think about them, then like it just doesn't matter to a lot of fans because they would rather go out and play I don't know who you want to take, like Lane College, and it's
yeah.
another HBCU, and they're helping out another HBCU, and the
oh
attendance is
god,
all that matters. Like more people that like the real argument I got was that game in Birmingham between Jackson State and UAPB that got canceled. They said that game was going to be better attended and mean more than if Jackson State played Jacksonville State in Birmingham.
Yep.
And for
Yep.
me as an outsider, I just don't think that's true. And
stupid as
like we disagree, and it is what it is. But for me, how you guys are FAMU people? You're telling me that FAMU playing Albany State is going to be more interesting, more engaging, and be better for FAMU than if FAMU met Kennesaw in Atlanta in a neutral site?
No.
bruh.
I don't
Hell
I
no.
just don't see how that's the
I
case.
I'm
Absolutely not.
Blue. I'm telling you right now. We going to ATL. You know how
That's
much
what
Just the
alumni
fact
is.
that, honestly, Blue, just the fact that you said Atlanta, I don't really
Yeah,
care who we
that
play. It's the fact that you said
you
Atlanta. That's
Blue.
it.
is
You just said one of the third, probably the third highest alumni base for FAMU. That's it. First is probably
Sick.
I say first is probably Orlando, Miami, and
Mhm.
Atlanta. Those are the
Mhm.
three main areas
Those are the three.
that the
Yep.
FAMU alumni be at. So
yeah.
definitely people will go to that game. Like for me, I don't understand as far as this. If you play out of conference games and let's say okay, you go to the SWAC championship and you lose. You may possibly you just lose that one game. Why can't two teams in the SWAC go to the playoffs? Why?
Mm.
If everybody play out of conference games, you got consistently every year at least two teams going to the playoffs and at least one of those teams winning. So
Mhm.
like you're making the SWAT look better and you're making a competition in the SWAT look better.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it just I don't know, like for me I'm young and I just want to see football. I don't want to see oh
Right.
we got to play this to help them out. I do understand that in the long run, but sometimes you got to help yourself out at the end of the day.
Right.
And,
So
I get it. Everything's about money, especially because HBCUs are so underfunded. So that's why, like, I
mhm,
get the Celebration Bowl, I get the money games, I get the classic games. Like, that's all cool. Like, no one's asking you to give that up. The
yeah,
one thing
No.
is like, can you put one date aside and play somebody? Like, that's it. Just give me 1 week. And my thing is, everyone says, well, they won't do home and homes with us. Well, on one side, because you don't like the better team doesn't have to travel. So like if you're not winning out of conference games, why is anyone going to come to you? But then on the
Right.
flip side is there are teams who will do home and homes. Like you're telling me that Stephen F. Austin, who is a really really good FCS team, would rather travel to Lorman than Jackson? Would rather
Mm,
travel to Lorman than Tallahassee? Would rather
mm,
travel to Lorman than Montgomery? There's no
yeah.
way.
exactly.
I'm sorry. Like if they're willing to travel to Lorman and do a home and home, they'll play anybody. Because
Right.
out of Itabena and Lorman, there is nothing there. Like not a singular thing
Not a
outside of that
single thing.
university. So there's no way you're telling me they'll go play them in a home and home series and won't and don't want to go play in Jackson in front of 60K. They don't want to go to
Right.
Alabama State and play in a really nice stadium in a really nice city. Like it just there's a lot of things that I've been told by fans as excuses to not play these games that for me I don't think it's true and the reason they do is cuz it's never happened and for me I feel like with all the recruiting momentum, with all the media coverage, now is the time to strike while the iron is hot. Like it's not because we saw what happened when the MEAC sat with their hands in their pocket and got picked off by conference realignment. The SWAC is moving at a light year speed. Now is
Mhm.
Yeah.
time to put everything on the table and be like, this is legit football. Like we are one of the best conferences in the FCS. And then you got people saying you don't care, but then you guys will see on Twitter if FAMU's not ranked in the preseason poll, how mad are people going to be? They're
Hella
gonna
Huge.
be
mad.
heated.
Hugely pen.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah,
man.
but then they don't play no FCS out of conference team. So how do you get ranked? If you don't care about the playoffs,
Right.
then why do you care if you're ranked?
I
Mhm.
think what's important is who's in on these conversations. Are we talking with folks that have, been in the position long before we ever got onto the scene? The whole dynamic of like, oh, you millennials don't know anything, da 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 da. Da. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
in some respect, I do understand where they're coming from because people don't want to know where their roots were or don't want to know where they came from. I totally understand that fact. But I take that same, mindset of you'll never know how big something will grow until you plant that seed. You know what I'm saying? So, in essence, yes, could it cost you a little bit more money? Maybe, but you just have to be smart about it. So, who's in on the conversation? Are you talking with people that have been doing the same thing over and over again? So, yeah, they're limited on education. They're going to
Mm.
say, oh, yeah, that's not going to work. That's going to cost too much, or that's going to take too much time, or we don't have the resource, all of those things. Yeah, they're going to say that because you're only catering to that same audience. You need to bring more people in. Like Blue, if you were sitting at the table, I'm pretty sure you'd be like, okay, hey, here's some schools that could be cost efficient for you, but also in the long run could help your program grow. Even if it's not okay, someone in your conference, even if it's okay, you got to go 30 more minutes down the street, whatever, it's always going to help you. And I think that that's what's wrong a little bit with our HBCUs in totality, of like that mindset of change is not going to help but only going to hurt, and that's why we're always kind of stagnant in a lot of things that we do. So I think as we kind of continue to move, we just have to continue to push, getting the conversations to the people that are really and willing to listen, because they're out there, and there's some older generational folks that are ready for change. It's just they're probably sitting in front of the same people that they have been sitting for 20 plus years, 30 plus years. It's like, oh no, we're not doing that. We're not
Yeah.
doing that. I'm like, wow, well, how are we supposed to go? Bit get better, bro.
And,
That
and
makes
I get it. I get it because a lot of the older generation too also like they grew up watching the SWAC struggle to gain
yeah,
prominence, and they went
Mhm.
through the fall of the SWAC due to segregation and things like that. So like it's different for
yeah,
them, and I understand that coming as an
yeah,
outsider, as someone who has been looked at as like, okay, is he here really to cover the football? Like what's going on here. And
Mhm.
like, I know I have a different perspective because I'm coming from somebody who, isn't a SWAC graduate, but just loves
Mhm.
football and fell in love with SWAC football. But like for me, thinking out of it is like my channel is as a football guy, I want to be able to go on my show and when I rank the FCS conferences, be like, yeah, I got the SWAC top three. The SWAC is a top three
Mhm.
FCS conference and be able to defend that. But for me, covering the entire FCS, other FCS fans are real quick to say, well, yeah, well, the SWAC's 0-20 in the playoffs. Well, the SWAC ain't ever beat McNeese. Well, the SWAC,
Yeah.
FAMU was a really good SWAC team, got drugged by Southeastern Louisiana. Jackson State
Right.
lost to a 6-5 South Carolina State team. So like there's always a rebuttal for them. And for me, I just feel like there needs to be steps taken because you mentioned it. There's a lot of teams like Southeastern Louisiana, McNeese, Nichols are all in Louisiana. Why aren't you playing Grambling and
Mhm.
Southern or even some of the Mississippi
Correct.
teams? In Mississippi, it's in the middle of two, really, if you take Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and let's just say Georgia, but you're
Yes.
looking at like what damn near 100 different FCS teams you could play from
They're all
Jacksonville State.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jacksonville State's moving up, so I won't name them, but North Alabama, Sanford, Kennesaw, Mercer, Southeastern Louisiana,
UT
McNeese,
Martin.
yeah, UT Martin,
Exactly.
ETSU, like the list goes
Yes.
on and on and on.
Austin
And
Peay. What the hell?
it just
Yeah.
like there's so many teams, man. And so like I'm as much as I'm tired of the excuses, I understand where some of the hesitancy
Yeah.
comes. But for
Yeah.
me, is if you because the whole goal for me, and this is my question to all SWAC fans, I've asked this on my channel, is what is your end goal? And so
Yeah.
that's always when every time I cover a topic, I always ask people, what's the end goal? Because once you tell me your end goal, I can give you the steps that you need to take to get there. And some SWAC fans say we want to go FBS. Well, you
Mhm.
better start scheduling some competition. You better start
Yeah.
earning some money. And I can give you the kind of the checklist of what you need to get. If it's we want to be the face of FCS, well, you better beat the
Mm.
current faces of the FCS, or you're never going to get
Mhm.
there. So, my question to any SWAC fan that's hesitant about a conference games: what is your end goal? And then you need
Yep.
to look at the SWAC. Are they taking the steps to achieve their end goal? If they're not, then you need to reevaluate and not be as critical. And listen, there's a big narrative out there that yes, you like we like the SWAC has to travel to Eastern Washington or UC Davis or North Dakota State or South Dakota State.
Mm.
That's not true.
Mhm.
Like we just
Nope.
talked about, there's like 50 FCS teams in like the South
Literally.
that you could play that are willing to schedule home and homes because North Dakota State's probably not because they're a 9-time national champion and they're
Yeah.
not coming to play you.
Yeah,
They've
they're
earned that
Right.
right
exhausted.
not to come to Jackson and
They're
play you.
also all the
But
way in North Dakota.
exactly. And so
Exactly.
Mercer
Right.
They'll
Mercer ain't
come.
coming to get a check from Jackson.
Yeah.
UT Martin ain't coming to get a check.
UT Martin, I
ETSU's
know
not
is
coming.
going.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's so many teams. Austin Peay's coming to Alabama A&M.
Yeah.
Someone call them and get them on the phone for 2023, 2024. They've already shown they'll play. So for me, the
Right.
excuses are going to run out at some point. Now it's
Yep.
time to be proactive. And I think your guys' platform, Scotty's, myself,
Mhm.
CFLs, everybody, all the new voices in the SWAC, as much as yes, we need to like make sure we know where we're coming from, know the history, have all our P's and Q's in order before we speak on it. But I think fresh
Right.
and new ideas are good for the SWAC, especially with how fast they're moving. And so I think as long as these platforms keep evolving and keep growing and spitting new ideas, the SWAC's going to be just fine. But I think competing in the FCS level, there's the number one thing, man, to come full circle is just win these
Yeah.
games, and everything else will figure itself out.
Um, I feel like if we can't if we don't like to play these teams, we need to make up. We need like as far as the SWAT needs to make up another bowl game or something, celebration or something to make people come to the game. Like it's a lot of conferences and it's a lot of mid level teams that's either par 500 or under 500 that the SWAT can play. Like
Mhm.
it's all up and down from at least from North Carolina, like you said, all the way from Texas, that they can play at a neutral
Mhm.
site. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be like you said, it doesn't have to be a home for home. It can be at a neutral site where they
Right.
can play, where their fans can come meet in the middle, and our fans can come meet in the middle, and we can play, we can laugh, do whatever we want to, because everybody wanted like nine times out of 10, everybody wants to see football, but at halftime, they really want to see the band.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
really want to see the band. Like even though I come to see
Fourth
football,
quarter.
exactly. We nine times out of 10 we could be like, okay, what they gonna do? I ain't gonna go. I ain't gonna go to the concession stand yet because I heard they can play. So like making stuff up like that to help with the scheduling, help with the attendance, helping with this the environment of going to the games because if you telling a team or at least a school in the SWAC, hey, we're going to play. Let's say we play Austin P in Dallas or Houston,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like for closer to fam or somebody like we're playing South Carolina State playing Wofford in Charlotte or FAMU playing the Citadel in
Mhm.
Jacksonville.
Mhm.
That
Yep.
would kind of make people go to the game. It's like, okay, I get to travel, I get to go for a weekend, and I get to watch football. So it's just making those partnerships. How about say with the other
Yeah.
conferences?
And, and
Yeah.
like the flip side of it too, and I get it because like for me, I'm so engulfed in like the FCS that like if Mercer and Western Carolina play, I know the players. Like I'm invested in that game because I'm like, oh, this is a great matchup between X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z. And this,
Hmm.
a lot of SWAC fans that I've noticed aren't invested in the FCS. So
Mm.
they take an isolationist point of view. So like North Dakota State fans get excited for Eastern Washington games and South Dakota games, North Dakota games because they know those teams. And
Right.
more and other FCS fans, especially PWI fans, are invested in the FCS as a whole. A lot of SWAC fans, based on my experience talking to them on my show, they're SWAC fans. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
some SWAC fans I've heard call on Scotty's show, they don't even know the SWAC's in the FCS. Like
Mm.
they just think it's a SWAC. And
No.
so therefore
Jesus.
h- like how do you my question is, and this is a big step for out of conference games, is how
Yeah.
many fans in Alcorn understand how good Stephen F. Austin is? Like I do.
Mm.
Like, because I'm excited for that matchup. I'm going to Lorman for that game because I'm like, I have to see that matchup between Alcorn
Right.
and Stephen F. Austin because of all this. Is there any fans in Lorman that are real pumped to see Stephen F. Austin? I don't know if that's the case.
Right.
And so the
Right.
next step for the SWAC is getting fans invested in FCS. So when FAMU plays Kennesaw, whether it's in Atlanta or not, because we all know they're going to go in Atlanta, how many
Mhm.
FAMU fans are going to be invested because it's a good game, not just because it's in Atlanta?
Mhm.
And that's how you
Right.
evolve from there. Because when you look at the FBS, now let's take like as much as the SWAC isn't Power Five, when Ohio State and Oregon were playing in the COVID season before it got canceled, how many people were pumped to see that because they understood how big of a game it was because they understand the teams. The number one thing the challenge for the SWAC out of conference is getting fans invested in other teams and storylines. And that starts with media coverage because the way I put it to Scotty is, yes, my content for the SWAT gets a bunch of views because it's hot. But for me, I still don't want to stop covering the Portland State players because my hope is
Mhm.
somebody will watch my show and be like, oh man, I rock with VJ Mallow from Portland State. He had a great interview on Blues Channel. Now they may go watch a
Hmm.
Portland State game. And if they watch a
Right.
Portland State game, maybe they'll see Eastern Washington play and fall in love with Eric Barrier. And so it's a trickle
Mhm.
down effect from there. So I want to see the SWAC take a less of an isolationist point of view because I feel like that is really holding the conference back because a lot of
Yeah.
fans don't know these other schools that aren't invested, and I think it affects the SWAC, and that's why those out of conference games aren't as big of a deal to some fans.
Right. But you know who is getting it? The schools that we're seeing shift out of these conferences to different conferences. You have the Hampton, you have North Carolina A&T. Now we have Howard moving into the CAA. All three of those schools actually have just moved into the CAA because first it was Hampton moved into the Big South, and then boom, North Carolina A&T follows suit 1 year. Now they're at CAA. So it's like, what y'all doing? Y'all just follow the leader here. But it when we're talking about these conversations of what is the end goal, like you said, Blue, like where are you trying to go with this, that it may not be a favorable decision for, okay, the North Carolina antis who love to stay close to their where they came from, because they were once in the MEAC. Was that where they started? I
Yeah,
don't
that's where
Yeah,
even know
they
what that.
yeah
yeah.
they were a
No,
founding
and
member.
Yeah.
Right. They were a founding member of MEAC, and then you had Hampton, all of them, other stuff. And so for those folks, they're like, "Ugh, why are we moving? Like, what is this for?" But when you're thinking of end goal, now they're being exposed to all these other FCS schools that are going to help them build longevity at the end of the day, right?
Mhm.
Granted, are they going to be losing out on some things that are traditional to them? Yes, absolutely. But that is the risk they're willing to take because what they're trying to get further and better. So I'm like, well, damn, what's going to happen with me at? Because that's another school. Bless their heart. That is like they're switching out. We got Howard now that's leaving, and it's like, but I get it. I understand where they're coming from. So I understand both sides. I get, the traditionalistic view, holding true, whatever you think is, whether it's culture, whether it's, the historical features that has created that foundation for them. But I understand, we are moving with essentially with the times, right? And a lot of things has to do with exposure, a lot of things has to do with resources and all of those things that has to offer for any type of program, no matter what the sport is. And they're looking out for all of their athletes, they're looking out for their coaches, they're looking out for what can be the best decision made so that our programs can continue to grow and be bigger. And that's what those schools are doing. So it's like the SWAC has that ability to do those things without losing teams. They just need to add into what they're already doing. No one's asking you to change who you are. We're just asking you to add in to what you've already created so that you can build off of that. And I think that's essentially what, Howard, Hampton, North Carolina A&T started to think for themselves. But the difference is MEAC essentially can't do that as much as SWAC can do that for their programs is what I'm saying. MEAC is a little bit less of, where they are level wise, compare and contrast. They're a good essential conference, but we're looking at numbers, we're looking at statistics. The SWAC is winning in that realm, right? So that's why we're seeing schools losing. But I don't know. What does that look for the MEAC? Where do we see them? Do we feel like some more teams are going to follow suit, or do we feel like okay, now they can readjust, reassess, and potentially maybe gain some more schools in their conference? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Man, it's sad, man, because losing conferences is always tough, but I
Yeah.
mean, you can pretty much put the end date on the MEAG. It's 1970 to 2022 or 2023. I mean, it's a wrap. I mean, they got 5 football teams. I believe they're down to like 7 associate members. Because I know there's some teams that
Yes.
play
Just
basketball, but
basketball. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Coppin State was one of those that doesn't play football.
yeah,
I
and
know for a
so you're
fact.
down to 5 football schools, which is not great. I mean, it's a bad look, and, on top of that, I have it on really good authority that CAA is adding 1 more team, and they're looking
Mm,
specifically at Norfolk State and South Carolina State.
mm.
One of those 2
I
teams
knew
is going to
I had a feeling about Norfolk for sure.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
if you look at it from the CAA's point of view, so we'll take it from both sides because the CAA has a point of view and so does Howard. The
Right.
CAA loses James Madison. That is the bread. I
Hmm.
mean, that'd be like the
Bread and
SWAC
butter.
losing Jackson State right now. What a
Yeah.
loss that would
Yes.
be, or the
Yeah.
WAC losing Sam Houston, which they did, or the OVC
Right.
losing Jacksonville State. They
Yeah.
lose James Madison. So one, adding Norfolk will bring back that market of that Virginia coast that they lost to James Madison. I believe James Madison and Norfolk are only about 3-ish hours apart, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. So they
Hmm.
get that part of the country back. And then if you can get South Carolina State, you get Buddy Pugh, the history of South Carolina State. But I would imagine Norfolk would be number 1 on their wish list, with a close second being South Carolina State. And then on top of that, the NEC, which Sacred Heart has won for the past 2 years, they actually have been courting Delaware State for, I believe, 3 or 4 years now, trying to
Mhm.
get Delaware State to come. So I would imagine they're reaching back out, and Morgan State would probably be the pairing partner with them. So let's say either one of those scenarios happen. If the MEAC loses 1 more member, it pulls the
It's
plug. I
done.
mean,
Yeah.
they're on life support right now as is, and I think the CAA is going to pull an offer here in the next few weeks, possibly months, and the NEC is not going to stand flat-footed either. They're going to try to pull Delaware State into the fray. And what happened, looking at it from a holistic perspective, is we knew there was going to be some conference realignment at FCS because of the ASUN and WAC being new conferences. We knew they were
Yeah.
going to have to pull members from somewhere. They had a scheduling alliance. What people didn't see happening, and this is where I forgive some teams who made bad decisions, is nobody saw COVID coming.
Mm.
Nobody, and
Mhm.
saw the major
Mhm.
losses at the FCS level not
Yeah.
having a season. And we all three of us being FCS fans, money's not an abundance. Every single FCS team wishes they had more money outside of maybe James
Correct.
Madison and they're moving up, Sam Houston, even North Dakota
Right.
State doesn't have a big surplus of money. So
No.
everyone really got hit hard. And then it just went chaotic. We had teams going to the FBS. So conferences that people didn't foresee being active became active and just started picking people off. And it became an arms race. And when you're in an
Yeah.
arms race, the more collateral, the more supplies you can get, the better. So when you look at the Southland, they had nothing to offer. The Southland got picked apart. And so they had to pull from D2. The OVC pulled Linwood from D2. They got picked apart. The MEAC, though, was in a weird place. So I felt like it was almost like you're going into this arms race and you've got your arms tied behind your back. They never had a
Yeah.
chance because once A&T left, once FAMU left, once Bethune left, once Savannah State failed at the D1 level in 2017, they had holes in their ship before it even started. And so
Right.
they're already on life support. And then 85% of your ammo you can grab are PWIs, and nobody wants
Mhm.
PWIs to come to the MEAC. So
Nope.
now you're hindered by that as well. So what was there? You can't have a game plan. And I feel so bad for the new MEAC commissioner because this started before she even came into office. This started with the past
Yep.
MEAC commissioner. And she pretty much, I put it this way on a podcast earlier, it was like she bought a house and the previous owner hid all the mold up under the carpet. And now
Mhm.
they're just discovering
Mhm.
it. And she's kind of just left with it sitting in her hands. And so if you can't add PWIs, none of the
Yeah.
D2s are ready to come up. I get it. Clark Atlanta would be great. I heard from a Clark Atlanta alum on my show, they don't have the money and they don't care enough
Mm-mm.
about sports to move up.
Nope.
Savannah State just got done hemorrhaging money at the D1 level. They can't come.
Yep.
So who do you add? Because I think a lot of the other D2 schools saw Savannah State try and they were the best case scenario to go up and fail. So who's going to take that shot? Because if I'm a D2 school, just in my perspective, if I'm going to take a chance, I need stability, I need innovation,
Yeah.
I need forward thinking, and right now the MEAC has none of that. Right now
Right.
you're pretty much trying to jump to D2 D1 and you're not having any guaranteed. If I'm a D2 school, I'm looking to join the SWAC way
Yeah.
before I even consider the MEAC,
Right.
and it's sad because I don't want to see the MEAC end. It's just they're out of moves. It's like a chess game. You're just a
Right.
sitting duck at this point. You can't escape it. So I don't blame the MEAC commissioner. I blame a series of bad decisions and a lack of proactiveness. Because once A&T, FAMU, and Bethune left, I felt like it was a ticking time bomb. And the way I put it, before I throw it off to y'all, is you're trying to disarm a bomb and you cut the wrong wire. As soon as those three teams left,
Mhm.
that timer
Mhm.
started ticking way too
Taking
fast,
real
man. And
fast.
yeah, I
No,
mean,
it ticked so fast, and I didn't even think this was news for me as far as Howard leaving. Like this was out of the blue. I guess in my perspective because it was just seeming like they were hitting a point where they were making strides for their athletic program to just I don't know be comfortable where they were, but I
yeah.
guess not
They better invest money.
totally.
I'll say that.
Yeah,
They better get their money up because I'm
Yeah.
looking at the
yeah,
CAA budgets when this move happened. I mean, you're going up against Delaware and some of these schools that are
yes,
spending millions of dollars on football.
dollars,
And
yes,
and I've talked to some Howard alums. It's been a long time coming of Howard not caring about athletics. And
Athletics,
if you
yeah.
don't care about athletics, I'm telling you guys, like everyone thought it was James Madison carrying the CAA. Villanova was
mm-hmm,
a top 8 seed last year in the playoffs.
mm-hmm,
You
Mhm.
still you
mm-hmm,
still have Monmouth coming in from the Big South that has been playing really well. Delaware was in the semifinals of the playoffs in the spring season and was one score away from going to the national championship. They got real powerhouse football teams in the
yeah,
CAA. If Howard does not invest in athletics and do not care, I'm telling you, the way I put it to Scotty is you're looking at a 2-9 season in the MEAC this past year. You could go 0-12 and not win a game for like 3 or 4 years if you don't invest in athletics appropriately. So
yeah,
that's my biggest question to Howard to the CAA is are you going to commit to this move? If you don't, it's going to blow up in your face and you're going to embarrass your university because you're not going to be competitive.
And the
Now,
only
didn't
game they probably will
OVC
win is
and Big
homecoming.
South, didn't OVC and Big South like merge? Do you think
Um,
that that would have, or what? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
they have like a scheduling. So they merged only for football. So it's like a scheduling
Yeah.
Right,
alliance. So it's kind of like
right.
a half merger. And I
Got you.
so did the Southland did it with somebody too, and I don't remember who they did it with. I
I,
believe the
is it
Southland did it with the
Sunbelt?
ASUN. No,
Oh,
because the
maybe.
Sunbelt
Okay.
FBS.
Got you.
Um, or they were talking about it, at least I don't know if the Southland ever finalized it, but that's an option for
Hmm.
the MEAC. I mean, potentially, but I mean, for the MEAC with 5 teams, you might as well just fully merge because I
Yeah.
just don't think you're going to be able to be self-supportive at that point
No.
Blue, should they merge with Suncom or something? Cause like just
of the
thinking about the
SoCon.
yeah, the geographical schools and where everything's at and like because you still got North Carolina Central and you still because out of those teams that you talk, you still got North Carolina Central that's kind of left like right there. Like and South Carolina State, they may go to the SWAT. We don't know like that's the only team I can see going to the SWAT right now, and everybody else just kind of venturing off and doing their own thing. So like who
Um,
could they really merge with?
The SoCon's tough. One, the merger is going to be tough because I don't know if a lot of people want Morgan State in that deal because it's so far up the coast, and
Yeah.
so those
Yeah.
SoCon teams, man, that the travel is going to be outrageous. So really and truly, I think a merger is going to be tough for the MEAC unless they get rid of Morgan State and Delaware State. I think they
Yep.
both got to go,
I
and
was
I
just about
know
to say
that's
Delaware State is a
and
challenge.
and
Because it's so far
and
up.
we'll go on the tangent here before I wrap that up, but like the SWAC merger, where they said just form a HBCU super conference. You guys, as FAMU people, know the reason FAMU left the MEAC is because of travel. Do
Travel,
you
yeah.
Yeah.
know how mad FAMU is going to be if they got to start traveling back to Delaware and Morgan State?
Yep. Nope.
They are going to lose their minds.
Yep.
So
They
that's
are.
not happening. The SWAC is not going to take Delaware State and Morgan State off anyone's
No.
hands. And the Super Conference won't work anyway, in my opinion. And here's why: because you got 12 teams in the SWAC now. Let's say you add 6 because they want Tennessee State so bad. So let's give them what they want.
Mm-hmm.
You get Tennessee State, you get the 5 MEAC teams. You got 18 teams stretching from Delaware to Texas.
That's far.
Mm-hmm.
And, and who is
And they
traveling?
always complaining about money, and that's expense.
I just want to ask you guys, like, because FAMU travel's amazing, and so we won't use
Hmm.
FAMU, but let's use Grambling, who's like kind of an average travel fan base.
Right.
Who's
Right.
going to Morgan State for that game?
And not a
I'll be
damn
honest with
soul.
you. Nobody.
I don't even think there's FAMU fans that would take that trip. FAMU fans would be like, "Listen, I'm watching on Facebook. I'm not going to Delaware
That
or Morgan State. Like, it's not happening."
literally that's
No.
what we said last season when we was playing those games. It was like we can watch this on Facebook. We can watch Howard on Facebook. We can watch these other
It,
schools on Facebook. Like, nah, we are
Right.
not
it,
going to
the,
these games because number one, you know how Florida people is. It's too cold. Number two,
It's during the fall, so you
yeah, it's
know it's
during
gonna
the
probably be
fall.
snowing or damn near.
Exactly.
Ooh,
I will
child.
stay my butt in
the,
Tallahassee where this warm weather is.
I don't blame you.
Hmm.
Listen, I'm not going there. Like, I got North Dakota State fans who asked me to come to Fargo. I'm like, I'm not coming unless it's August. I'm not taking my butt to Fargo when it's negative 50s. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
travel costs would probably go up over 100, maybe 150% adding those 5
Yes.
teams, and then you got the
Yes.
problem we just talked about it out of conference games. How
Yep.
in the world are you ever like? Because the SWAC has a 8 or 9 game mandate for conference games. I think it's
I
8,
think it's 8.
but yeah,
8.
but you add 18 teams. What's the conference mandate going to be, and how are you going to play out of conference teams? Because my example is
Never.
Jackson State. They have to play Alcorn every year. They have to play
Mhm.
Southern. They're going to
Mhm.
have to play Tennessee State if they come. FAMU doesn't want to get rid of the Jackson State game. So
Mm-mm.
how we're in and Southern's rotating off next year. The SWAC's just going to play a fully SWAC schedule
That
and never
that's
play out
that's
of conference games.
yeah.
And never play. Yeah,
It's
it's
not
not
gonna
gonna
work,
work.
and then you can go to the pod system, but then you're gonna have the problem of who fits in what pod, and then unluckily, you're gonna have to put FAMU in probably the Morgan State pod, and they're gonna lose
Mhm.
their. It's just it doesn't
Yep. It's
logistically it doesn't
chaotic.
make sense. Yeah, like for
Yeah.
culture
Yep.
wise and keeping HBCUs together, it makes sense, but
But
money
Right.
wise, travel wise,
No.
logistics, it doesn't work. And so for me, when I'm looking
Mm-mm.
at conferences, man, coming back to your question, the SoCon, I feel like it's a weird connection, but I feel like he's like the old like white dude in the corner that just don't cause no problems. Like, don't talk to him. He ain't gonna talk to you. He's gonna sip on his tea and let
well,
y'all like call, let everyone do the talking. It's like they don't make any moves. Like I don't remember the
they
last
don't.
time the SoCon was active. And what they're gonna do is say, we'll keep our UT Martin or our ETSUs. We're gonna keep our
Hmm.
Mercers. Don't bother us. We're in the corner.
Right.
Don't come start no trouble with us. We ain't start trouble with nobody. So the
Right.
SoCon, I don't
Correct.
think would take anybody. But the conference that I think is going to be underrated, or there's two of them. The OVC is an obvious one because they got hemorrhaged with teams leaving. The
Mhm.
ASUN, though, I think is a
Mm.
conference that people are overlooking that I think potentially could be the conference to reach out to these teams. And it's because they're a
Hmm.
new conference. They had Jacksonville State. They had them in the bag. That was going to be the flagship program. It was supposed to be the way it was plugged to people in the FCS community is Kennesaw State versus Jacksonville State was going to be the like flagship rivalry of the ASUN. Well, Jacksonville State had COVID issues. They said, we got to offer, we're flying up to the FBS level. And the FBS and FCS had conference realignment issues at the same time, and it really hurt a lot of teams. But
Yeah.
Hmm.
the ASUN with Kennesaw right there, with Eastern Kentucky, with all these teams, I don't think they mind going to the Eastern Seaboard. So I can see South Carolina State, Norfolk, all those teams coming in because what they want to do is they want to continue what they did with the WAC and just add a few more teams and try to become a new and solidify themselves as a conference. And they had a
Right.
lot of people leave and come and a lot of turnover. So look for the ASUN. But I told people last night on Scotty's show is if the MEAC disbands and it's every man for themselves, the OV is going to be a ticking time bomb between the OVC and the SWAC to reach out. It's going
Yep.
to be
Yeah.
a race because I haven't like the OVC knows Tennessee State's flirtation with the SWAC about leaving because of the OVC's instability and being an HBCU. The trump
Hmm.
card for them, go get more HBCUs. Go get
Yep.
South Carolina State. Go get Norfolk. Go get NCCU. And then you can say Tennessee State, man. Listen, you can have new classics with these schools, or let me show you that we care about you and want you to stay. Almost kind of like this is what we have over the SWAC. Now y'all don't have to leave because
Hmm.
now we have these
Mhm.
games for y'all. So I'm telling you, the OVC is going to be real quick on the trigger if the MEAC disbands. So look for the OVC and potentially could bring them into a scheduling alliance or something, depending on how that Big South thing works out. And also, the Big South could be quick too to pull those teams in as well. So look for all three of those conferences. I think could be options. But the SoCon, man, I think they're just going to chill in the back and let it happen because they didn't lose nobody. We ain't got to add nobody. I think they're just going to chill on it.
All right.
They
Cool.
said, "My name is Tess. I'm not in that mess. I don't know what
Exactly.
y'all are
Exactly.
saying."
And shit, Sun said my name Bennett and I ain't in it. So hey,
Ain't
y'all got
in
to settle.
it.
Y'all got to settle
I
that fight
don't
on
want
y'all
it. I don't
own,
want no
man.
smoke.
Exactly, man. Thank you, Big Blue, for coming on this channel, man. That's your nickname on this channel, Big Blue. Cause Scotty got 1,000 nicknames for you.
Nah, he's too much. He's too much.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, man, for coming on this channel. We definitely gonna have you back on, man. If you reach out to us, we'll definitely come on the channel. We'll talk some FAMU knowledge and other knowledge we'll know about for HBCU football for you, man.
Hey man, listen, I can't thank either of y'all enough. I love coming on other channels, man, and chopping it up with football. So thank you guys so much for reaching out. Y'all are definitely gonna have to come on the show and talk some FAMU with me, man. So we'll set that up very, very soon, man. But I can't thank y'all enough. Thank y'all for having me for sure.
All right, man. Peace
Yes,
out.
thank
Be
you,
good,
Big
man.
Blue.
Big Blue. Shoot. Um, that was Big Blue, guys. You can check him out at Blue Bloods, the Blue Bloods, at Twitter, YouTube, everything. So, I'm definitely gonna have his link underneath the bio. It was an amazing show, wasn't it, Robin?
I love the show. I
Yeah, it was an
love, I
amazing
love, I
show.
love. I
It was an
like
amazing show.
one thing about it. I feel like if this show is going to do anything, not only going to we going to talk about, you know, sports, athletes, coaches, but Like there's some also deeply rooted conversations that need to be held around
Yeah.
HBCU athletics that, people not oftentimes are open enough to have conversations about that need to be discussed. Just like how we talked about, the history, tradition, all of those things that cater and impact future decisions, So if anything, I like how Blue has, said that our platform, his platform, off script, like all of those us, you know, young leader individuals that are creating this platform to have these discussions, but also to people to like listen and hear the importance because like not to sound cheesy, but like Loki, we're the future. Like essentially, right? Because when
Yeah.
our older generation of people that have, they're passing the baton to us, we're going to have to figure out how to work with exactly what we've been dealt with in addition to this whole new concept of a world in athletics. Like the fact that we're talking about NIL deals, let's talk about we never talked about that really 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Right
Exactly.
now,
There
we got to
wasn't
be
no
like we
NIL deals.
right. There were no NIL deals. You know what I'm saying? And that caters into what the impact of your program, the impact of your recruiting, the impact and
Mhm.
sustainability of the people that want to stay there. You know what I mean? Like, granted, is it something that we're not used to? No, but that's what we have to continue to kind of like and educate ourselves on. So we're doing great, Ron. We're doing
Definitely,
great.
definitely, definitely. Every week is getting better. We had Blue, we had Kofi on last week. We had Blue,
Kofi,
big Blue this week,
big
and
blue, big blue.
next week, guess who we got? We got the one and only
Ooh,
CFL. The CFL coming.
CFL
He
is
coming
coming
back.
back.
He
CFL
coming back, and
is
next
coming back.
week is draft week. So we want to talk
Draft
about some.
week.
We're gonna talk about some athletes that supposed to be drafted
Yes.
next week, and CFL said CFL gonna be at the South Carolina State spring game, and we're definitely
Hmm.
gonna talk about Jackson State spring game, and talk about some other hard hitting news that been going around. SWAC
And that's
being
gonna pop up.
sued.
We got
Sued.
news today that we weren't even prepared to talk about until today.
Exactly. So, hey, trust me, pre-snap read, we on it, man. Like I said, we on IG and Twitter. We're not on Facebook yet. I don't like Facebook that much, so
I don't really
uh,
like Facebook either.
yeah. So we just
If
gonna
we,
stay
if
on.
y'all want it, we'll do it. But if not, we're not gonna
Yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
We just gonna stay on IG and Twitter. Peace out. Love. Robin, got anything to say?
I love you all. That's it. That's the talk. That's the tea. We love you.
All
Black
right.
love. Also white
Peace.
love. Also Asian love. Mexican love. Latino love. I love it all.
It's black, tan, white, yellow. Hey, we love y'all. Peace out.
Purple.
Make sure you guys follow the Pre-Snap Read on IG and Twitter. Make sure you subscribe, share, and like this channel, man. The more it grow, the more we'll show. Peace out.